I've often pondered a question, and that is, what are people worth to God? I grew up in East Tennessee with 5 kids in the family, and 4 of us were boys. And my old daddy, he is known to give us a few lickings from time to time over things that we considered trifling. Most of the time it was over money, or more likely our lax attitude toward money. My old daddy must have thought that money was hard to come by in those days, because he sure did take it personal if we did anything that cost him money unnecessarily. I remember one time that, man, he gave me a busting for making a real pretty design on a dirt stable floor out of sweet feed that we had reserved for the milk cow. And, I thought it was a beautiful expression of creative talent. But my old daddy, he wasn't into art that much, and so I got a busting for that. But he was stern, sure enough, and maybe above what he should have been. But we noticed that he had been going a little soft lately, and we didn't know what that was all about. We did know that he spent quite a bit of his early morning hours Bible reading and contemplating in his easy chair, but we weren't sure what it all meant. But one day we found out. Now, my brother Mike, he had one speed, and that was wide open. I mean, he took everything over to the edge and near about took it on over the edge. And I figure the only reason he stayed alive is because God probably had a hyperactive angel on his case, keeping him alive. And he tried everything and some things twice, but mostly what he tried was my old daddy's patience. And, he should have known that the log was too big for the tractor that day. But, we were down on the creek banks on Daddy's Creek there, and we had cut down a big old hemlock tree that was fixing to get undercut by the creek waters anyway, and we were trying to save it, take it up to the lumber mill. And this was a big tree for that part of Tennessee. I mean, 2 men could barely reach around and touch hands, and trunk went up way forever and the long way to the first limb. It was a big hemlock tree. But we had sawn it down and cut it up into sawmill lengths, going to take it up to the sawmill, but we had to drag it up the hill first. Had a little Massey Ferguson tractor and a chain. And my brother Mike, he thought that he could do it, but I knew that log was too big for that tractor. But he said, well, we hook to it right quick here and get a good running start and head up the hill and it ought to work. And so he was sure of it. So he did. He hooked to it and he took off, sure enough, on the flat. And then when he hit the hill, that's when things went wrong. Instead of keeping on going up the hill, that log was so heavy, it just pulled back on that little Massey Ferguson tractor, and the tractor reared up and swung around downhill, came down and fell. The front wheels fell on the shovel and broke that handle clean in two, broke the shovel handle in two. Well, time stood still there for a minute because shovels cost money. And my old daddy hadn't seen it yet, but he would pretty soon. And we all figured we'd see some fireworks when he got back up there and looked at that. And after a while, here he come. He had a hickory walking stick, and he was working his way through the huckleberries and Virginia creepers and coming up to check on progress. He was always big on progress. He wanted things done right now. And so he came up there, and after a couple of eternities, he finally made it to he made it up to the tractor, and he stood looking and taking it all in. He had x-ray eyes. He could see the picture behind the picture. And then he'd look at our expressions on our face, and he could read our thoughts. And he just stood there looking at all that. He saw the sideways tractor and the broke shovel and No surprise here, he saw the driver, and his mouth drooped a little bit at the corners, and his eyes squinted just a little bit, and then he started walking off. And we thought, what's going on? We thought he was just so mad he was addled, because because by now, the quickest belt in East Tennessee ought to already been swinging, and we should have by now been cringing under that "money doesn't grow on trees" speech, and the one about grow up and get responsible. We ought to have been hearing all that by now, but we didn't get any of it. He just walked off, and we were mystified about all that, and one of us found our voice, and said, well, he called out after my dad and said, well, aren't you going to do anything to Mike on account of the shovel? And my dad just called back one little old brief reply and just kept on walking. And, these days, my brother Mike spends a lot of early morning hours Bible reading and contemplating, and he credits my daddy for showing him God. And he's able to do it like one sentence. And so when we called out to Dad and said, aren't you going to do anything to Mike on account of the shovel, he just looked back and called back and said, well, the boy's worth a lot more than the shovel is. So what's a person worth? Well, we're worth a whole lot more than a shovel. And it's a good thing for daddies to remember that.